was so substantial that the people in Marfa, the women and children, slept in the courthouse while the men patrolled around the town. It was that much fear. There was fear, whether it was well-founded or not. And if you go down the lower Rio Grande Valley, where most of the atrocities against Tejanos and Mexicanos occurred, it was even greater. The numbers were huge. I mean, it's estimated that during this violent period, the Texas Rangers killed probably 500 people without benefit of trial. Were some of those bad guys? I'm sure they were. Were all of them, or even the majority of them? I don't think so. It was a process called ley fuga, the law of flight. You capture somebody, and on the way to take them to jail, they always run away or attempt to escape, and of course you shoot them, ley fuga. But to keep this in perspective, during this time, there was this thing called the Plan de San Diego. If you're going to have a revolution, you got to have a plan. Whether it was the San Luis Potosí by Madero when he started the revolution against Porfirio Diaz, but you got to have a manifesto. Plan de San Diego was a plan that, among other things, called for the murder of every Anglo male over the age of 14. So you can't make this right. You cannot justify it. But you can put yourselves in the minds of the people who were fearful and see how this evolved. And this is the thing that teaches us object lessons that are appropriate today. You see some of the rhetoric going around now about immigration. You see some of the tone of the comments, and you can see how bad things have happened in historic periods based upon the fear and the ignorance. So that's what we hope to tell. We hope to tell that story. We hope Texans can learn from it. I think, as I said, you need a win. You need some legislation that will establish a court of claims or some kind of process, and you need some good press. Now, I'm retired, and at such time as you seek to go after any of those things, I suggest press or a win or legislation. I would offer my services. I'm not seeking a job. I'm not a registered lobbyist. I'm not going to charge anything, but I would put my name behind an effort to try to adjudicate some of these claims and have justice done. So I don't want to talk too long. I will tell you that as a former politician, I learned that politician comes from politics. Politics comes from the Latin poly, meaning many, and ticks, meaning bloodsuckers. So I'm retired, okay? Don't hold it against me. But I'd be happy to try to answer any questions about the film, about the historical period, or provide any free advice. And of course, my advice is provided freely, and it's worth less than that sometimes. So I'd be happy to try. Yes.
My name is Jerome Padilla from New Mexico, and I guess the question I have is, you mentioned that are the grandparents and parents, grandchildren guilty? I would say no, but in New Mexico, what we've really looked at is, for Texas, do they have title insurance that goes along with acquisition of property, so when they have property? So what we're looking at in New Mexico is that the right of the person that has the injustice is to get the property back, and title insurance should guarantee the rightful owner has that property, and the person that has control of that property relinquishes it, gets compensated by the insurance companies. So the jeopardy is really with the insurance companies that insure the title or the transaction that occurred. And so in New Mexico, the assessment we've done is jurisdiction, control, ownership are all mutually exclusive of each other, and the rightful owner should own, whoever's in control should control, and whoever has jurisdiction should have jurisdiction over that. And so the title companies in this scenario should be responsible for the transaction paying out the injustice that occurred.
Yeah.
And so when you put it in that paradigm, it doesn't matter if it's if somebody stole something, illegally took something, or a wrongful process through title by administration or title by succession, however that goes. So my question to you is, it has to be rectified, in my opinion. The rectification has to occur, I think, as long as we do not look for a solution, and we say the past is the past, that's real easy for the person that's not suffered from the incident. So my question is property in Texas insured under title insurance?
As a matter of practice, any conveyance that occurs to real property today has a title policy associated with it. I don't know that that was the case then. I mean, that's, I can't tell you. I tend to think not. I also tend to think that a transaction that occurred, and it really wasn't a transaction, if somebody took the land, somebody killed it, somebody actually ended up with title in the Marfa courthouse, that wasn't a lawful conveyance, and even if there was a title policy, wouldn't be covered by the title policy. So the title policy probably would be, the title company probably wouldn't be liable. That
Exactly. So if there's fraud involved, it goes back to the original frauder.
Yeah.
If it's not fraud and it was a legal transaction through administrative transfer of title, then the process is wrong, and then the title insurance would be obligated because they did their research, and the public knowledge and evidence presented and available for information to the title companies was published, and they did the due diligence on research. So back to insurance, when you wreck another person, you crash your car, you had no malintent, it's just an accident. Sometimes an accident occurs in titles, right? So the insurance companies insure those situations. Fraud is a different story. You brought that up just now. So fraud, if the fraud was done and it's proven that it's fraud, and if there's collusion with the county, then you're talking about the statute of frauds, which is a whole different federal issue versus just because the statute of fraud protects the community in general against states having corruption within their political subdivisions.
You know, I hadn't even thought about the title policy angle. You know, because I don't know of title policies being issued during this period of time. In all my time at the land office, we never encountered a title policy on a transaction that was that old. And of course, the land office, you know, it's similar to New Mexico, although in New Mexico, most of New Mexico is federal land or state land. It's not privately owned. But we have records of that first conveyance. We don't have records of subsequent conveyances. When the sovereign, whether it was in the case of Texas, whether the sovereign was the Kingdom of Spain, the Republic of Mexico, the Republic of Texas, or the state of Texas, whenever one of those four sovereigns conveyed it to the first private owner, and that conveyance was patented, we have a record of that. But anything that happened after that, there is no record at the land office. Those subsequent transactions and conveyances would be in the county courthouse of the county of jurisdiction. So I know a lot of people have come to us and said, no, you know, I've proven that my grandfather owned this, or my great-grandfather owned this, and said, no, you've only proven that your great-grandfather was the first recipient of a conveyance from the sovereign. So who owned it after that is a function of subsequent transactions. But it was one of the survivors, correction, the grandson who was present at the filming of the massacre, his daughter would be the great-granddaughter of one of those killed at Port Veneer, had been to the land office and shown that the victim, Ramon Nieves, I believe was his name, had actually owned the land and had owned substantial holdings in Presidio County. These were not peons. I mean, these were not squatters. These were real people who had houses and had a subsistence life and a good life, as you listened to Mr. Flores describe. They had a good life. They had good things to live for. I never knew Mr. Flores, Glenn Justice, the author of the book, knew him. We got to know him well, knows the descendants. And, you know, the descendants are really excited about having their story told. And we want the story to be told in part because of the things that you mentioned, that nobody is aware of this. You know, and I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how to adjudicate these things when you've got 5 generations, 3, 4 generations left. But any other questions? Yes, sir.
My name is not important. I'm a soldier. America has always, and again, I love America, but it has always been a war group. They kill the Indians, they kill the Mexicans, they kill the French, everybody, they got in their way. I was listening to this gentleman, professor, talking about us. He said 3 things that I really didn't like. My great-great-grandfathers were engineers. They developed this part of the nation. The whites in the Far East talking about New England and so, develop laws from us. Now, the problem you were discussing since you're a land commissioner, Texas, okay? Former. You get to make the laws, oversee what's happening. There's not a person here, even the professor, can state every law that's in Texas, which none of us really don't know, or how to defeat, or how to change. Okay? So that's the main problem. America has taken over this land, as you call federal land, but it's really individuals that are within the government that have squandered this property. And it's pretty hard to fight something that you don't know or don't have knowledge. Now, I'm not advocating a war, though I'm a soldier, and I would love to get into it, but that's not going to reflect on the way who we are. Another thing from some ministers that I've heard, it's not good to go back to the past. You can't change it, I can't change it, I can't make it better, you can't make it better. We're sorry what has occurred. But inevitably, we get to the point where we want some kind of restitution. Well, we're going to fight the law that's our law. Okay?
Yeah,
We were able to do things under the auspices of a command to tell, you got to do this. You don't have the right to change that.
Yes, we
You
do.
have to do what the commander tells you. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I want to go back to America.